how much HR, human resource management, do you really need? And again, this is sort of a feel for the ball type thing. You want to layer in the amount of HR management you need with the complexity of your business and specifically with how many people you have. If you have a sole proprietorship and you're the only employee, you don't need an HR director. You are the HR director. It's you. So these are sort of common sense things. And it's very difficult to tell you exactly when to put in tons of HR because it is driven by you have one employee, five employees, 10, 50, 100, 150, 300. At each level of growth, you're going to need different layers of HR management. One pointer I can give you is there are people, there are organizations called HR consultants, and they can come in and kind of let you know what you need to do at an HR level. Learning and leadership, super important. There are some people in American history who are just super talented. You look at a guy like Bill Gates, a Steve Jobs, a Henry Ford. They literally started their business and grew their businesses to be huge organizations, and they were able to do that. Not a lot of people can do that, although some entrepreneurs can. But the point is, you have to be willing to personally grow as a leader as your organization grows. You have to be open. You have to be learning. You got to be listening to people. And that's why, hard to describe this, but I'm going to take a segue and just throw some information in here. I want you to think about it. This is why you don't really know until it's happening to you. But there are some people who are sort of startup entrepreneurs, and they're great getting a business off the ground and then sort of selling it to somebody who can scale it. There's some people who can get a business to 5 million in revenue or 20 million or 50 million in revenue. There's not always, but there's often some point at which, as a leader, you either don't want to keep growing the company, or maybe your skill set doesn't match what the future of the company is going to need. I don't know when that's going to be for you, but you'll sort of get a feel for that. Leadership is somewhat innate. It's sort of like there's some natural ability. It's just like athletics. You have some ability that you're born with, but you can always learn to be a better leader, and you can learn to lead. A lot of it's practice. What I did when I started out in my career is I read a lot about leadership. I always read a lot about history, historical figures. It's amazing how much you can get from that. But be open and realize that you have to be learning and growing about leadership in order to grow your company. A very specific point, people management is like sort of a puzzle. This is the way I look at it. When someone comes into my organization, I want to, well, first of all, I have a perceived knowledge of what their skill sets are. And I know what I need to get done at the company, but it's perceived because during an interview process, you don't really know what you're getting, obviously, until someone starts. But I got a perception. When someone comes in, I want to learn about that employee's strong sort of attributes and maybe not so strong attributes. But then most importantly, I want to take their strongest skill and match it to my highest need. It's kind of like a puzzle. And again, I think often, and it's really true, as leaders, we tend to blame people. We really do. We do that with everybody, with customers, with employees, with spouses. We're just good at blaming people. Really, it's more a matter of matching the skill that someone has with a problem set. And you'll be amazed how often you can save a relationship by getting someone in the right peg and having them solve something that's important to you. If you have employees, and maybe even before you don't have employees, you need a culture or value set, sort of a basic set of cultural values that you talk about all the time. I'm going to totally mess this up, but I have to try it, okay? Right now, I'm looking into a teleprompter, so it's hard to talk to a teleprompter, but there's somebody out there listening. I always look at this like sort of building a cake. You've got your cake at the bottom, and at the bottom, we're going to grow our cake from there. We might have 3 layers to the cake. We'll probably have some frosting. But the cake set is your sort of culture or value set? What's important to you as an organization? We've talked about this during branding, but it goes over to managing people as well. What are the cultural values that define you? And by the way, I'm going to give a couple as best as I can from memory, but they have to be real and they have to mean something to people because it really drives everything else that is on top of that cake. If you have the right bottom layer cake, you can stack 10 cakes on top of it. If you don't have the right culture set or culture value set, you can't build anything on it. So some of those values might be love for customer, love for employees. We listen more than we talk. Although I'm doing tons of listening, I'm talking right now, right? We're honest, we're direct. We're honest and direct, but not cruel. We don't gossip behind other people's backs. Make those culture or value points real to people. Don't just have platitudes like, we want to make the world a better place, because that doesn't mean anything to anyone. Handling employee turnover, I don't really know what to tell you about this. If you hire employees, you could be the greatest leader in the world, but some employees at some point will leave. I'm going to give you the benefit of my experience. So, one, understand that employee turnover is just part of running a business. Once you get beyond 1, 5, 10, people are going to leave. That's going to happen. And I guess the thing I would recommend is don't blame the employee and don't blame yourself. You want to learn from that, but there's no blame here usually. Sometimes they're just going off into their new life, and that's fine. The reason I say that is when you start a company, this is for would-be entrepreneurs mostly, it really is. When you start a company, it's almost not, cult is not the right word, but it's almost like a family. It's really important. You've got like 4 or 5 people and they're super core to you being successful. When someone leaves that core, you feel abandoned, you feel sort of betrayed. This is natural. But people are going to go on their own path, or people might not work out. So dealing with turnover is just part of growing an organization. If you've got a good culture set, if you try to do the right things, you're not always going to get it right. But more often than not, you'll be okay. And lastly, in this section, I really need to mention this because I've made every mistake under the sun about this. Realize you're going to make mistakes. You're not perfect. People will understand that. If you like people, I mean, if you really do like them, which is sort of an inside game, they'll cut you slack. You're not going to get this perfect. I'm really talking to would-be entrepreneurs or really nascent entrepreneurs right now. If you're hiring people now, you're kind of growing your company, the first or second time that people leave your company, it's just feels really bad. You feel like a failure, or you let people down, or they let you down. That all might be true. What can you learn from it to get better? That's what I would leave you with in this section.